Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. The show's going to start in about a minute. Do me a favor. I know that commercials can be annoying. Thank you. Let me thank you in advance for listening to all the commercials all the way through. We're going to have another minute of commercials before we get to the show, but it's going to be a great one today, I promise you. But a couple show notes. If you want to contact me, the best way is via email, john@wordballoon.com. And of course, I'm on Twitter @JohnWordBalloon. I'm on Facebook under my name and also the Word Balloon Network. My YouTube channel, I've reached 1,000 subscribers. I always want more. It's going to be a busy 2 weeks for me. The podcast is going to be my main focus, but I promise you before the end of the month, I will start YouTubing shows beyond representing the podcast here at YouTube, but it's under Word Balloon. That's where my channel is. Please join me there. And as always, thank you very much for your support and patronage. One more spot, and then we'll start the show. But as always, thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Two great word balloons for you today. First of all, it's already out, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I talk about the article that he wrote in Hollywood Reporter in response to Martin Scorsese's dislike of the Marvel films and calling them not cinema. I thought Kareem had a great reaction to that. I discussed that and then represent a great conversation I had with Kareem in 2017 about his love of all things nerd. He's one of us. And he is really legitimately out there doing these essays for the Hollywood Reporter, supporting the nerd cause. He also has a great Joker review and comment about all the fear that was behind the release of Joker. He's great. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but you're listening to this episode, and man, I am so glad to welcome James Tucker back to Word Balloon. James and Mike Jelenic, years ago, when the Batman Brave and Bold series was still brand new, they came on Word Balloon. I had a wonderful, long conversation with them. It was so great. They really broke down the Brave and Bold cartoon with Diedrich Bader and all the guest stars. That's when Aquaman was really funny and very regal in King of the Seas and very arrogant. Ha ha! John DiMaggio playing him. James has had a really long career in DC animation, going back to the original Batman animated series of the 90s, Batman Beyond, Superman, all the movies, and slowly became a bigger factor in the movies to the point of becoming an executive producer, and as he says, the continuity keeper. And there's also been this connected continuity within the DC animated movies that's separate from the comics, though certainly inspired by the comics, starting from the Flashpoint cinema all the way to next week's Blu-ray release of Wonder Woman Bloodlines. So, I mean, God, James has just had an incredible year when you consider the other animated films that he exec produced. The Reign of the Superman and Death of Superman two-parter. Batman Hush, I know it's a controversial movie. I liked it. I like the differences. James and I talk about that. And so many more in between. All you have to do is go to IMDb and look at the list of all the great films. He's also been doing great stuff on the humor side as well. He was involved with the Batman 66 animated films, Batman vs. Two-Face, with William Shatner as Two-Face, and Adam West's and Burt Ward's performances, and of course the Return of the Caped Crusaders, along with Julie Newmar. Those were terrific. He's also done some great Scooby-Doo movies over the years. But in particular, I really wanted to talk to James about the evolution of the animated product. Going back to the Batman animated series years, and its big departure and also elevation of storytelling from what kids were getting weekday afternoons and Saturday mornings. I mean, that was a big step forward. Well, the animated product continues to evolve, and I really think that in a lot of ways, American animation is finally becoming on par with countries like France and Belgium and, of course, Japan with anime. It's great to see the suits, the people behind the money that put the money into these animated features are finally getting that there is an adult audience out there that is enjoying this stuff and supporting it as well. Buying subscriptions to DC Universe, certainly the streaming service that features the animated films after they've been out for a month or so, and then they pop up on DC Universe. It's going to be great to see what they do on Warner Brothers streaming service as well, and we speculate about what might be coming there. Another thing we talk about is the relationships that have happened between the characters. And there's definitely a through line. I mean, this is the same Lois and Clark from The Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman that show up in Batman Hush. Wonder Woman is the same character that has that great conversation at the beginning of Reign of the Superman with Lois in Wonder Woman Bloodlines that comes out October 22nd. This is great, man, and I really am happy to have an opportunity to talk to James. Also, hey, man, I am one of the foot soldiers behind Susan Eisenberg, Justice League's Wonder Woman, really wanting a Justice League reunion film, or as James even postulates, maybe it'd work as a series. I think both are great ideas. And it was great. It was a really great back and forth. It went a lot longer than I thought. I thought maybe we talked about it for 5 or 10 minutes. We almost talked 20 minutes about this because, as I say in the conversation, I think of things like Star Trek and where the characters went from the television series to the feature films. Now even Star Trek Picard is a great example, and the Next Generation cast, I think, will have some interesting conversations 25 years down the line, and where they are now compared to where they were then. Well, I think there's that kind of potential as well with a Justice League reunion movie or TV series. And, hey, this is Bruce Timm's baby when it comes to that stuff. James worked for Bruce on those things, and you can tell from the conversation. But, I don't get a chance to talk to the suits, the people who make the money decisions. James does, and I just wanted to get his perspective. And he talks about the pros and cons of going down that road. And we have a great back and forth about that I think really is one of the highlights of this conversation. We talked for nearly 2 hours, and I'm so glad that James was willing to come back because he's another guy who I really appreciate his point of view. I think he's one of the best creatives out there in American animation, and I'm really glad he's there at the DC universe because, as he says, he's the continuity keeper. And I think some really interesting things have happened in the movies under James' supervision. James Tucker talking about the DC animated universe. A great comparison, if you will, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. DC seems to be doing it right in animation, and James is one of the reasons why. I'm happy he's on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you greatly, League, for your support. As I've said, radio is a roller coaster for me these days. I'm doing the best I can, but, we're right behind newspapers in terms of consolidations and, downsizing and everything that's going on, and I'm feeling the pinch. So thank God for the League of Word Balloon listeners and the people who subscribe to Word Balloon. You really are helping keep the lights on here at wordballoon.com. I think I have great content, and I really think you guys obviously do too because you're all listening to it right now. But I really want this to continue to expand and evolve, and I'm able to do that with the help of the League of Word Balloon listeners through their subscriptions of Patreon. Word Balloon is free. It will always be free. But if you want to help out the cause, do you think Word Balloon is worth $1 a month? Do you think it's worth the price of a comic book a month? I hope you think so. And I hope you'll help me out, if you're able to, by going to Patreon and subscribing to Word Balloon. Patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on the Patreon ad at wordballoon.com. Thank you greatly for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics, a great sponsor. It's been a year. It's been a wonderful year, and I really appreciate Aftershock support. And I'm happy to tell you about Aftershock Comics because I think they have great books from some of our favorite creators. Garth Ennis, Marguerite Bennett, Tim Seeley, Cullen Bunn, Chris Sabella, Stephanie Phillips, Adam and Adam Glass, the father and son team that's doing such great work. Joe Pruitt and Mike Martz editing and helming the Aftershock line with tremendous creative books, genre-bending books that deserve your attention. Don't take my word for it. Head to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond books on how to order them through your local shop at aftershockcomics.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into this great conversation. Welcoming back James Tucker. As I said, I've had a few opportunities to talk to him at red carpet events and a couple of the DC animation press junkets for 5 or 10 minutes. But man, this was great. He was like, "No, we can talk." And at first he's like, "Oh, let's talk for an hour." And then I realized, oh my God, I've had it for 2 hours. He's like, "Oh no, it was fun." He seemed to enjoy it. I think you will too. The evolution of DC animation through the eyes and efforts of James Tucker today.
Welcome back to Word
Balloon.
Man, as I was just telling you before we started recording, it's been a long time since we've had a long sit down. And I'm glad that I've seen you on the occasional press junkets and everything. So really, I'm thrilled that you're back for a little longer talk today.
Yeah, it's finally calmed down a little bit. I don't know, when was the last time? Was I still on Brave and the Bold, or had I already started doing the movies?
Our first conversation was you and Mike Jelinek talking about Brave and Bold, which I loved. And
right,
that was a thrill. Yeah. The last time we talked was... Man, it's kind of bittersweet. It was the press junket for Return of the Cape Crusaders, and Adam West was with you.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
In New York.
Oh my God, that's all been a blur.
Yeah.
That was such a weird, wonderful, but bittersweet time.
Yeah, man. No, it was my first opportunity to really. I had met Adam a few times at conventions, but that's the first time I got to ever interview him. So that was great. It was great seeing you, and really, man, congratulations to the whole animation crew for these the evolution of the movies since you got involved with them, and also obviously stemming from the television weekly series work and everything. This is great, and I really believe with every production. There's levels of sophistication with the storytelling and the characterization and the visual scope of these movies that I think continue to really blow us away.
Well, yeah, thanks. It's grinding us to a nub.
I bet.
But, I didn't know what, I've said this before, but when I was asked to helm the movies, I thought I was just inheriting the one-offs like they had been doing. So the idea of creating a continuity was sprung on me at the last minute. So, it's been trial and error trying to build something that, the way the movies are greenlit, you can't, at least I was in a position to plan a whole long-ranging arc. I had to kind of adapt as I went along because movies would get greenlit based on extenuating circumstances, like if a live-action movie was a hit. So, from year to year, I never knew where I could go with the continuity, and I would just immediately try to swerve and adapt whatever we've been doing to fit where we were going. But where we were going would be decided at, often at the last minute. So, and sometimes we were already in that direction, and then they flipped the script on me because of some other thing that happened. But, all told, and looking back at what we've done, I forgot, I lose count, but 15 or 16 movies later,
Wow.
I'm happy with it, as much as I can be, given the amount of control that I did and didn't have. But, and I look at it as something that, the feature guys have struggled with, so, I guess in a way, and just looking at that alone, it's a victory. But yeah.
Well, it's just been great to see. When the animated movie started, those early conventions and stuff, and we would see reps from animation and even Levitz and still publishing with DC at the time, and just the requests for. Hey, when are you going to do Killing Joke? When are you going to do some of these classic stories, right. Dark Knight Returns and all that stuff? And it's like, we'll see. And thank God, we've got these epic stories. Good Lord, this year in particular has just been amazing. Right. Starting with Death and Reign of Superman and Hush. And then, obviously, now with, in just a couple of weeks, available on DVD. It's already available digitally, Wonder Woman Bloodlines. So did the continuity start around the time of Flashpoint Paradox? Is that when you guys decided to start linking the movies, or was it later?
Full disclosure, we did Flashpoint Paradox.
Right.
And much like the comic book, the story of how the New 52 sprung from Flashpoint after the fact, because Jeff Johns himself told me he didn't know New 52 was going to be the result of Flashpoint. As he got into it.
Sure.
At the start of it, it was just a limited event, and so the same thing kind of happened to us on the movie side where we did Flashpoint. We considered it at the time a standalone as we were doing it, and then. We had another movie prep to go into production. I think it was a Superman. It was either Superman or Trinity. We actually had two scripts in the works at different stages.
Okay.
And then Alan Burnett and I had a meeting with our bosses and with DC. And in that meeting, we were told, there in the meeting, we're going to start a new continuity. And, it was news to us. We were like, we are? And so it made natural sense to kind of mimic, since, it was at that time based or inspired by. I like to say inspired by, because the New 52 was what it was, and some of it was great and some of it wasn't, but what we were doing couldn't really mimic that. We could just mimic the event. But we had to, after Throne of Atlantis, we kind of pulled away from the source material and kind of went in our own directions, and we ended up doing, adaptations of older stories fit into the continuity, like Judas Contract and Hush.
Yep.
So it was just kind of a thing where, okay, we're being tasked with doing this. And yeah, the initial movie, Justice League War, definitely had to have elements of New 52 in it, that the Justice League Origins. And Throne of Atlantis had already kind of pulled away from, it was its own thing in a way. It didn't really hinge on being New 52. And then after that, we were just off to the races. I mean, between the New 52 stuff and the Damian stuff, which predates the New 52,
yep,
I was just kind of like, let's just try to make it work. But because the way these movies were made, the only constant person on them or persons were me and Alan Burnett.
Okay.
And so the continuity, I was the continuity police because Alan had a lot of other stuff to do. And, continuity is not something he likes to be saddled with. I mean, his whole, if you look at BTAS, it was very episodic. It wasn't arced out in this long fashion like we're used to today, and he comes from that kind of school of just tell a good story.
Sure.
And so I let him focus on that, and I was the one who kind of had to make sure we, as much as we could, keep the T's crossed and I's dotted, because we were making up as we went along. It wasn't like our, Young Justice, where they had kind of have a flow chart, and God bless them. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. But
series,
it pays
man.
off. Fans appreciate that kind of attention. But boy, I mean, when we were on Justice League Unlimited and Justice League, we kind of knew where we wanted to end up, but we left it open to how we got there, because we always we don't, it was like too much like math to try to figure it out at every point.
That's my favorite.
It was a lot of times the best stuff was happy accidents, things where we went, oh yeah. I mean, it was all about, Justice League Unlimited. Our writers' room was minuscule. It was, me, Bruce, Dwayne were the constants, and then a rotating writer, usually Stan Berkowitz or Matt Wayne, and we just would hash it out in the room. Well, that's Unlimited, and on Justice League it was Rich Fogel, myself, and Bruce, and we would just figure it out. But anyway, I got off track there. But
no, but that was great.
We were tasked with doing. Oh, you were saying off of a Flashpoint. Yeah, so we didn't go in. We didn't do Flashpoint knowing we were going to build a continuity. So we kind of had to retrofit it after the fact. But it wasn't hard to do. I mean, it kind of left it loose enough where we could create something.
Well, yeah, and tell original stories, but there's a through line, and it really feels even more like a through line, I think, in the last year or so. And really, you start with the death and reign of Superman and go into Hush, and you get these great Bruce, Lois, Clark interludes, and it definitely is like, last week they were dealing with Reign of the Supermen, and now, Bruce Wayne walks into the planet and, is looking for Hush and looking for information and stuff. And it's great. And I mean, the conversations between the characters, in Death and Reign of Superman, especially, and I know it's kind of an echo of what happened in the comics, obviously, but like Wonder Woman and Lois's first lunch, and just that great awkwardness and everything. I should ask you, James, in terms of fine-tuning the continuity, do you guys get the script from the writers, and then, do you guys take a pass and kind of juice a scene? And no disrespect to the people whose name is on, the final credit as the writer and stuff like that. But as executive producer, and as you say, the continuity cop, is that what you're doing? Are you kind of fine-tuning story?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to, because none of the writers have worked on every single one.
Sure.
And most of them haven't even watched. It's not necessarily their responsibility to have watched everything. But yeah, there's times where I've had to, often I have to make sure that something written doesn't contradict stuff that we've already covered, or in the case of that Wonder Woman Lois thing, that was something I personally pushed for because I needed, because we were going into Justice League War with that concept of Wonder Woman and Superman being romantically involved, which was something as a fan, a young DC fan. I'm a lifelong DC fan.
Oh yeah,
and that was verboten for so long. That was just something that never was ever supposed to happen. And so when it finally happened in the New 52, I mean, my first reaction was, oh no, but then I kind of leaned into it because at the end of it, I always thought, and we resolved it, but that of course they won't stay together. And that to me was interesting. It wasn't their relationship, because they are brother and sister, basically. I mean, that's kind of that's always been the tone of their interaction.
Sure.
And I mean, I think following them trying to have a relationship is interesting, but much like I thought Storm and Black Panther being married kind of diminished both characters ultimately, and ultimately it didn't work out. But the most interesting part of that was them breaking up.
Absolutely.
I kind of think this won't last. Now, I didn't get to show the scene where they actually broke up, because I thought that's something no one's seen before, like a mature, agree that this doesn't quite work out for us, but that we still love each other as friends and whatever.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to show that, because when we got the green light for Death of Superman, it had to be Clark and Lois. I couldn't have done Death of Superman with Wonder Woman and Clark being...
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to make it work, nor would it... we already had to change enough of the original story to make it work.
Sure.
In our running time, and so I was like, okay, so Clark and Lois have to be together in this. And I wanted them to be together, but I had hoped I would have a movie before that to show how Diana and Clark, decided not to be together.
Interesting.
And the next best thing was to put it in the fabric of Death and Reign,
yep,
where Clark and Diana have that conversation in the Danger Room or War Room, whatever their version of the Danger Room is. I don't think holodeck. I don't know. Well, no, that's Star Trek. We don't have a new original name for it. But and then I wanted to follow it up. Because I know how there were fans who were invested in the Clark Diana thing, and they were probably younger and didn't know that it's been lore that should never happen, but it happened. So I wanted Lois and Diana to be okay with each other, and I wanted them to be friends, because I tend to think, I don't know this for sure, but I think it's just the more mature way to go. I think the idea that we're so competitive these days with everything is a faction and everything is, I'm like, no, two grown women would come to an agreement that, okay, just because, we both like the same dude, we can be friends. Like Wonder Woman of all people is mature enough to not hold grudges or be, petty.
Right.
So I wanted to show that. So, I mean, that was a scene I specifically asked for. And there was some pushback on it, because it didn't, writers can be kind of mathematical in their how they structure things.
Sure.
And to them, it didn't make sense to spend screen time on that scene. And I'm like, no, because people have to not put Wonder Woman in a situation where she feels jilted,
Sure.
Because people will make up a scenario if you don't cover it for them. If you don't show the character having resolved that kind of issue, then you're going to have people hating Lois for no reason. You know what I'm saying? So
100%.
In order to make Lois work, because she was the center of the story.
Absolutely.
You knew quickly going in that Lois was the through line. Lois is what humanizes Clark and Superman.
Yep.
Lois is the touchstone like all of Superman's supporting cast.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I had to have that scene in, and I wanted it, and it was influenced a little bit by that issue Phil Jimenez did.
I figured. Go on. Yes.
Yeah.
In Wonder Woman. Yeah, that great conversation.
Yeah,
yes.
where it's just them having a long, Lois is shadowing Wonder Woman in her daily life, and also wondering, because again, in the comics they did dabble. That was the first time they kind of touched with Superman and Wonder Woman possibly being romantically linked. And so I thought this was, not only had the conversation in the bar to really to kind of cover those themes, and then have the payoff at the very end where, now Lois and Diana are friends and hang out, and Clark is kind of like, which to me is very human, like him
100%.
being uncomfortable with. So I just wanted, those are humanizing elements.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things that take a time to build up to. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Absolutely.
The first half of our world building required some patience from the audience who, again, we were asking them to view movies as long form continuity, which is a hard, because it's a movie. People are wired to look at movies in a different way than they do episodic television.
Sure.
But we were basically doing OVAs, long form, connected movies, and the thing is, it wasn't really promoted as such, so I think people didn't quite know what they were getting. The average person, I mean, the fandom, even though they didn't seem to get it either at first, but even though we said what we were doing, but we had to build up to that kind of, those kind of crossover things where everyone understood that all the movies are linked.
Yep.
And I think, the first movie was Justice League versus Teen Titans, where we brought Damian into the Teen Titans universe and had the Justice League in it, which that was the first movie I said, okay, here's where we say all of this is interconnected. But it was basically a Teen Titans story. So
I'm with you. Well, and also the fans, we were asking for, does this all link up? I think prior to Flashpoint. So I mean, the hardcore fans, we wanted it, and the Yankees,
that's the other thing. Yeah. I think it's weird because when they were doing standalones, fans would question why one movie was different. The
Absolutely.
same characters were different. And then when we actually started doing the continuity, it was like, why aren't these standalones? It's like it takes forever for the fans to. By the time the fans catch up with what we're doing, we've already flipped the script on them, and it's like, it's just weird. I mean, it was frustrating for me because I knew what we were doing, but it wasn't exactly branded as such. It wasn't branded as a new continuity.
Yeah.
On the packaging or anything. So, it was what it was, but I hope at some point they'll just collect them all, put them in chronological order, just the in continuity movies, and sell them, brand them, and lump them together as one thing, so it'll be easy for people coming in late to it. They'll understand because they are definitely structured to be seen in a certain order, viewed as part of a continuity, and it's kind of frustrating because even on DC Universe, they're not organized in that way.
Yes,
and so I hope someday I have a feeling some young fan now who will ultimately end up growing into running those things. There's like things now. I mean, the kind of things we have available to us now as collectors, and how there were fans like us who grew into positions of power who could say, I want this to cater to this thing like it never did when I was younger,
Right.
So, hopefully someone will, I mean, they're made now, so they're out there. They'll always be out there. They're digital, so they can't, the nitrate stock can't,
it's not,
be,
it's not going to dissolve. Absolutely.
Dissolve.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Well, again, and thankfully the Word Balloon audience now knows, and if they came in mid-story, they can go back to Flashpoint Paradox and watch them all in order. All they got to do is consult your IMDb page, Jim, and see what was happening and everything, and then go to James's credit as executive or just producer on IMDb, and it'll show you the through line.
Those credits are I mean, hopefully, and there's people who watch the movies and have created a timeline. I haven't even read it yet.
Oh, hilarious! I didn't realize that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are fans who've caught on, and now they want to, and I let them do it because I don't contradict them because they may come to some connection that, because again, it wasn't thought out linearly, like
this wasn't the plan.
There wasn't a blueprint. We kind of built. It was, if this were a building, it wouldn't pass code.
It would look like a Jack Kirby New Gods vehicle.
Right. Yeah. There would be hallways that dead end, and a door that would open up to outdoors.
Right.
And have no steps, and it'd be very dangerous. So yeah, it was jury rigged very much that way, and for good or ill. I mean, that's the way everything I've ever worked on. From the Bruce Timm shows to. I always like to leave room for surprises because if I know exactly where how I'm going to get somewhere, it's boring to me. That's just my personal. I want to be as surprised as the audience, and also there's room for. You build something or at least put the pieces in place, and then something happens between characters you don't expect. And you have to honor that. You can't just say, well, that can't happen because I really want to go this direction.
Sure.
It's like, oh, no, I mean, in Justice League Unlimited especially, that kind of stuff was happening all the time where we thought we were going to do one thing, and because of the way the characters went another way, we didn't, We thought Hawkgirl and Jon Stewart would get together in the context of the series, like we would show them reconcile.
Yeah.
But then we introduced Vixen, and I mean, Dwayne McDuffie and I actually had probably the only thing close to an argument I've ever had in this business was with him over whether we should do that. Because I was like, no, people love Vixen now. Vixen doesn't deserve to be dumped just because they've had and then it became the speech that Jon Stewart had about, I'm not going to let fate dictate what I do now. I mean, I'm paraphrasing the speech, but out of that discussion about whether, the audience would want John to get back with Shaira, but I was like, people like this new character.
Sure.
She's a valid character. You can't just, I just thought it would make John look bad. It would make Shaira look bad.
Interesting.
And it's not, but through that discussion, we came out with a more original and unique way of dealing with it, where John, in an adult way, it wasn't cartoony when John says, I'm not going to let fate tell me how to live my life. It was kind of a deep thought that you don't usually get in a cartoon.
100%, man.
So,
well, again.
So anyway, things like that I like to keep open. I like that to be the surprises to be involved. For us, the creators, as much as the audience.
Well, and again, this evolution of characters, and the fact that you've got this through line that does go back to Batman the Animated Series and Superman and Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I have to ask. I know that a lot of the fandom and also actors like Susan Eisenberg are really behind this idea of a Justice League reunion. I put myself in the same camp. I call Susan Spartacus as far as leading the effort.
She's great. I mean,
yeah, man, she is great. I honestly,
she has embraced that character. I mean, she especially, but I know, I've said this before, that the actors we get or cast to play these parts take them seriously. They feel like they're ambassadors to people's, childhoods, because, you look at superheroes, they're our American mythological characters. They're our version of Hercules and Apollo and etc. Like, they're our Greek gods. And they're our folklore. They're those kind of characters, imaginary characters that kind of create the moral compass of our childhoods.
Absolutely.
And so she takes that very seriously, and I find a lot of the actors who take on these roles, it's funny, you think that, they're just comic book characters, but they really embrace them. Most of the actors we cast have embraced it and felt it a responsibility. And if they don't, they're bums. But I haven't met a bum. I haven't, there hasn't been anyone, I can't think of anyone who really
didn't get it.
Who really hasn't and didn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they didn't get it at the time, a few days out on the street when people recognize them for doing that. Because that's the other thing. There are some actors who were taken aback by the fact that role, playing that specific comic book character, was more important to a huge percentage of fandom than their Emmy-nominated, stint as a character actor on this high-profile show.
Yeah.
Like they're and when they realize they're getting attention from something they didn't even know was that important, they really get in line with it. But Susan has always been on board with it from jump, and she has been the main booster for trying to get a reunion done. And it's funny because, people know Justice League Fatal 5 wasn't conceived as a reunion show.
Right.
It was, it was a script that came in and it was written a certain way, but it wasn't conceived as Bruce and I were in a meeting and he's like, well, I guess I'll do it in the Crisis on Two Earths style. I'm like, well, if you do that, because Phil Barassa designed the current continuity we're doing, and he was also the designer on Crisis on Two Earths.
Okay,
in that title, right? I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I said, we can tell the difference between his style on that and the style that he's doing now, but the average person on the street might not, and it might cause confusion. And Bruce agreed. And he's like, well, given the time, their only alternative was to use the Justice League designs from the show. So it was kind of, just a matter of expediency.
Interesting.
But then they leaned into it.
Yeah.
They leaned into it. And the thing, once I finally saw it, because I kind of was watching the process of it, and I read the script, and I went, if this is supposed to be a return to Justice League, it's very different tonally from what we did back then. And I wasn't sure. I was kind of worried it was going to feel like Near Beer. I would say that comparison was something kind of looks. It kind of looks and smells like the Thing, but it doesn't taste like the Thing,
Gotcha.
or vice versa. But then, and I don't know if it's Sam Liu's involvement. The script was very touchy-feely in a way that we weren't back then.
Okay.
We just weren't. In the early 2000s, we weren't as sensitive and woke as we are now.
I'm hip, yeah.
Because
sure.
those Justice Leagues have a very distinct worldview and tone. And so when I saw the finished Justice League Fatal 5, and I saw how much attention they gave to Jessica Cruz's real plight, and the mental health issues with Starboy.
Yeah.
I don't know if they call him Starman or not, but
I'm with you.
I was like, wow, this is like the show, but it's modern day. It's updated in a way that I think had they gone in knowing it was going to be a Justice League reunion movie, they wouldn't have made those choices. They wouldn't have had the sensitivity that I think if we did do an update, or not an update, but if we returned to Justice League, we might have missed an opportunity to make it more relevant to the younger audiences, the newer audiences today, because the movie that they ended up with, I thought, was really good. It was like Justice League, but it was modern.
Yes.
It wasn't dated.
Yes, it evolved. It evolved. But
it evolved.
It evolved,
yes,
but there's a through line to those original episodes, and also building on this continuity that you guys have created. And as you say, Jon Stewart and Vixen is a perfect example of it. Isn't there an opportunity with a Justice
Right.
League reunion movie to really look at how these relationships have evolved. And I mean, you've got Diana and Bruce and the flirting that was done on the original series, and maybe they're in a different place now. But wouldn't it be great to have that conversation between Kevin and Susan? You know, that's the thing, man. And I really, I am so, because of the evolution that you guys have made in filmmaking with these characters, that's why it's like, just like when, they started making the original series Star Trek movies, and the way that Spock changed because of the events of the first Star Trek movie. And it's like, now Kirk and his relationship has evolved. Spock is more comfortable in who he is. So now we have different conversations just than Captain and First Officer, and the friendship really deepened. And God, by the time of Star Trek VI, and forgive me for, and again, I know I'm talking to another Star Trek fan, but yeah, man, that's the thing. And I really think there's that same opportunity. So, I mean, dude, you're in the room. So, you're talking to the suits.
Well,
is
Bruce
it possible?
and I kind of are doing our separate things now. And also, I mean, the thing I don't know if I would be involved specifically because, I'm doing my own thing now.
Okay.
And back then I was a co-producer.
Sure.
And I have a certain degree of control now that I didn't have back then. And so I don't know if I can go back to being, second in command.
Oh, so would it be that like Bruce would be kind of the ringleader if there was any sort of justice?
I mean, that's
reunion?
what he always was. I mean, I always said that we were like in a kitchen when we do our story breaks, and I'd cut some carrots and throw it in a pot. Stan or Matt would do this, with some onions.
Sure.
But Bruce,
he was the chef.
Decided, he stirred the pot, and then Dwayne would season it. Dwayne would make sure that it all came together.
Yeah.
And that's how we worked, and it was a great way of working. But again, the worldview of the show. Now, granted, I had my own influences, and Bruce is very collaborative. He's very open to influences, but if it doesn't click with him, he always had veto control. And that's, the show you see is ultimately, it's pieces of all of us, but he was the deciding factor of which pieces of us you saw.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
So it's not it's not a democracy on that. It was, but it was a great working environment because I learned a lot. He did listen often to me, and Dwayne. I mean, he valued our input, and he listened, and so. But I don't think you can recreate that. And not saying you couldn't do it, because when I saw Fatal 5, I went, or Justice League Fatal 5, I went, this is the same show. It's almost like Fatal 5 is the next generation show.
100%.
That follows.
Yeah.
And with that, I can say that I could be involved, but I don't have to be involved, because the movie they came up with, I wasn't involved with it at all, other than suggesting using those designs, and I was actually able to enjoy it, even though I'd had the prior history with the show.
Sure.
I went, wow, this is really fresh. This is something we probably wouldn't have done back then, or had we known we were actually doing a reunion show. So,
interesting.
I don't know. It just depends on if it happens. I mean, I think it. I always worry about that, though. I have to honestly say, when people say they want something back and they hype it up for so long, when it comes back, does it ever live up to it? I mean, X-Files came back. Did you watch it?
I did, I liked the first season, and I think it maybe overstayed its welcome. But again, I think there are lessons of where it went wrong, like Star Wars, and I'm not a hater, but the way they treated the original cast of Star Wars. And shuffled them off so quickly and dismissively, frankly. I mean, and that's all I'll say. But again, you learn from those kinds of mistakes. And also the way, look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the seeds they've planted for this next phase. And man, right. I think the blueprint's there for Fatal 5, where, the core has maybe, gotten a little older. Now they're in a mentoring capacity, and also there's other conversations within themselves, like I said, that I think we'd love, and they would be fan service, but also, to support a new idea moving forward. And it's, so yeah, man. So I don't know. I don't think you can recreate what you did with Justice League and Justice League. And now I'm blanking. Unlimited. Thank you. I wanted to say Union. I know there was a U in there. Unlimited. But yeah, man. But again, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And you've already done it. I mean, with your specific continuity that you guys have built since Flashpoint. And it's like, no, there's relationships and there's great moments here. And I think you can call back with the original cast. And it would be really interesting to see, Steve, Mike Rosenblum and Bart, Mike's Flash and Bart Allen get together and have a couple conversations and all the different
well, that's the other thing.
Kids.
Yeah, just pulling the gang back together and I mean, I'm not one way or another. I just have qualms about the ability to do it.
Okay.
Given where we are now, but I mean, just in talking with Bruce, I mean, he was very nervous about how Justice League Fatal 5 would be perceived.
Interesting.
Because he didn't know. It was very much, again, it wasn't conceived to be a reunion movie. And he was worried that people might be a little pissed off that, they were getting something that wasn't honoring the original series as much, but what the thing they came out with was so much more sensitive and evolved in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing kind of operatic, over-the-top, high drama on Justice League. We had intimate moments, but ultimately we were doing this, basically King Arthur kind of thing.
Sure.
It was grand.
Sure. Contained in 20-minute episodes, too. You know what I mean? So you didn't have time. You didn't have time to have deep conversation. You had to go to the big bombastic stuff. To entertain a kid's half hour.
Yeah. But it was also, I actually think the Star Trek analogy is probably apt because we had themes in the show. I mean, the Cadmus arc it was very much a thematic
100%.
thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
But then you look at, this Fatal 5 movie definitely had a next-gen kind of quality to it where it's more nuanced in the subtleties of, dealing with mental health.
Yes.
I mean, if someone had mental health issues on our old show, they were crazy. They were in the Arkham.
Right. Right. Or it was that kid that invented.
It wasn't like, it wasn't sympathetically told.
Right.
I guess.
Right. I was going to say that kid that invented kind of that fake Golden Age superhero team before you guys ended up doing the Justice Society in the Brave and Bold and everything.
Yeah, we made him pretty much a straight up villain.
Yeah,
I mean, when there wasn't room for sympathy in that. We just weren't wired that way.
Right, totally, man. It was a different time. It really was a different. But that's a great thing, man.
Right.
I think, and that's what I'm saying, man. The product in general has evolved. You guys, as writers and directors, have evolved. And that's what I'm saying. It's like I think, and again, I don't mean to belabor this. We can move on to other things, but that's the thing. Yeah, I just think there's an interesting character and story opportunity to bring that core of actors back that we all love. And because that's the thing, the audience, we've grown up and evolved. And that's why I think I do think the audience is willing to see a new spin on an old concept. And also if you can, I mean, God, look at all the excitement for the Patrick Stewart Picard series and everything. And it's like, they're in different places, all those characters and actors. And it's a great chance for them to slip on the old clothes to a degree, but also say, it's been 25 years. Where are we now? What are we doing now? And it doesn't obviously have to be literally for the core Justice League cast. But I said, I just think there's a big character and story opportunity within the confines of whatever
I would
bigger.
say this: if there had to be a Justice League TV show, meaning if say this, the new. What are they calling it? HBO Max?
Yeah, the Warner streaming service that's coming.
I mean, if they want a Justice League show, there's no reason why it would have to be developed from scratch. You know what I'm saying? That would be a perfect opportunity. But someone has to ask for it as far as someone who's willing to pay for the production of it.
I understand
that's
that
definitely
too. Sure.
Something that's in the... I mean, I think even a limited series of interconnected movies would be great. But I don't know how. It just depends on what people ask for. I mean, I think it should be obvious that the fans are ready for it. So it's just up to the people who make those decisions to really go for it. But I definitely think with, after seeing Fatal 5, and I wasn't involved in it, I think and the direction they're going is great. If that's the direction they continue going to, which I can't see why not, because it worked for that movie to kind of show a more sensitive angle on these characters was something, again, we wouldn't have done back then, but I think that's what would make it fresh now.
Totally agree.
That kind of evolved thing. So I'm all for it. I don't know if I'd be involved, but seeing that and knowing that Sam Liu, who directed it, is and he and Bruce work together now.
Okay.
I think between the two of them, they could do that.
I got you. Okay.
I think that so. I mean, I'd consult. I'd put it that way.
That'd be great, man. Well, all right, and Billy, go on.
Yeah.
Well, you can finish your thought.
But no, that's all I can say about that.
Okay.
I will say though that the creatively, the show that seems currently to be the most that seemed left where stuff was left on the table was Batman Beyond, where we got cut short and we had room for more. But again, I think movies, like the Star Trek movies, carried the franchise forward. It was just they had to figure out how to do it, but they did 6, 7 movies.
Right.
So
right.
I think something like that is probably more feasible than a series, but who knows? I'm not poo-pooing either one,
sure.
And either one could happen. There's still story potential for both. So,
well,
I mean, me personally, I'm ready to do other things, other world building.
I understand.
Okay, but I'll at the end of the day, I need a gig. So, really, I mean, you talk to Bruce or anyone who works there, we're not. We have mortgages.
Yeah, man.
At the end of the day, we have to pay our bills.
Sure.
So, we will make. Sometimes we're tasked with ideas that sound bad at first, like Batman Beyond. The initial idea was very bad, and so, but Bruce was able, and Alan and Paul made it into something that was worth doing.
Interesting.
And in fact, by the time they told us to stop, we weren't ready to. So
wow, yeah.
So anyway, it's if offered, I wouldn't necessarily turn it down, depending upon what else was going on. But I kind of feel like, I'm ready to do. I miss series work, and I do see series work in my future. But I have other, goals to it. To cover. But we'll see.
Well, all right, fair enough. Well, and that also opens a door in terms of, and I don't know how much you know about this, but I found it interesting that the new Deathstroke cartoon that's coming up is a CWC product, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. That seemed to be the precursor to DC Universe, and now, as you say, this HBO Plus or Max, whatever the hell it's called, that's coming.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like you worked on the Vixen CW Seed series and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I was
the first one.
Yeah, and I was surprised that the platform of CW Seed is still a go-to platform, because it would seem to me, between the DC Universe and, again, these future plans for the Warner streaming service and everything, that everything would funnel there. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't. All I know is they're still figuring it out.
Gotcha.
That's from my sense of things. I don't have any inside information or anything.
Yeah, and I don't. And
but I think Warner. I always used to describe. This is from the first time I started in '95, but just observing how Warner Brothers sometimes worked, is I was compared it to an octopus with epilepsy, and each division is an arm that's flailing around.
Yes,
and sometimes they bump into each other and work together.
You're not the first Warner person that's made that observation to me. I understand. Yeah. I totally understand.
But the positive side of that is each division kind of has total autonomy. Like I don't think we could have made the kind of cartoons we've made. And I'm talking not just Bruce Timm stuff and DC. I'm talking about anime. I'm talking about all our library of things that we've done since from the late '80s on. It's because they left us alone, because they weren't that concerned with what we were doing. which is actually a termite terrorist tradition. I mean, you can go back to Leo's question.
I was thinking the same thing, man. Absolutely. Go on.
Yeah. So it's a Warner's tradition to kind of leave. I would say, if I want to be benevolent, I'd say they trust us to let us do what we want, but really they're just ignoring it. But and if you keep things cheap enough and you're competent, you're left alone. That's everything we've done that's been really good has been because we were left alone to do it. That's my opinion on it, and I think it shows. I think
That's a great answer, man. Yeah. Go on.
Now, whether that stays the same with this, we have new people in charge and new owners or whatever who come from a more corporate background. We'll see how that happens. I mean,
things can
change. But anyway, but I see great potential for even more, varied content with it. Whenever it shakes down, whatever it will be and whatever it's going to become actually starts happening. I'm looking forward to that being a new area to play in because something like DC Universe was something we fantasized about for years, a place where we could just put DC content. Who knew that would ever happen?
Absolutely.
And here we are with it. And
and the product's been great. I mean, that both animation and live action. I mean, that's been
I've been very impressed.
Absolutely, man. No, it's really. And I'm glad they've gone to even the video DC Daily, where they've got the group of DC fans, talking about the product and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's terrific, and I think it only builds the brand, and again, I think it thrills both young and older audiences. And then again, I think the opportunities of whatever Warner streaming, this HBO Max or whatever it's called, evolves into and stuff. Yeah, there's even more potential, so that's great. I wanted to ask. I mean, so you were at New York, and you ran a panel. What was what was the panel you ran?
Well, I didn't run it. I was on it.
Oh, I thought you moderated. Maybe you didn't moderate.
No.
Well, was it just a celebration?
Jerry Mariano.
Oh, sure.
What were you about to say?
I was wondering if
I wasn't.
Yeah, just like a celebration of animated product and everything. I don't know.
No, I was a couple of years ago. I think we were on a panel where when we put out the 10-year discs of the movies. That was a panel with me, Bruce, a bunch of people, Kevin Conroy. I mean, everyone was on it. Who was not everyone, but people. That was a panel I was on, but I don't moderate. No, I've never been asked to. Maybe someday I will.
Okay.
But that's not my gig.
Was it just purely for Wonder Woman Bloodlines, or what was it for?
Yeah, I was on both. We were two panels. Was one for Wonder Woman Bloodlines. We actually premiered a movie there.
Yeah.
Which, of all these continuity movies, we've never premiered one of them at New York Con, which has always been a shame to me. We've previewed them, we've showed clips, but the movie itself always came out later. But with Wonder Woman, they actually put it in this window so we could premiere it there. And, we premiered Cape Crusader and Batman Two-Face there. So I'd had the experience of sitting in the audience with the New York crowd watching a movie, and it's great. I mean, no offense to San Diego Comic-Con, but it's San Diego, so I think people are a lot more relaxed.
Sure.
I mean, they're good crowds, but nothing like a New York audience. And granted, I'm sure half those people were probably from somewhere else, but it's just something about the energy of New York and the energy of those fans that show up to that con.
Sure.
It's pure adrenaline. There are no sleepy times at New York Comic Con.
There's no room to sleep.
Where sometimes in San Diego, right.
Yeah.
But sometimes in San Diego, you hit the floor and it's kind of like, oh, everyone's on Xanax or something. They're just kind of
or behind the convention center where they got the steps and everyone's napping. Literally, absolutely, man.
They're all kind of tired and dragging because it's an ordeal sometimes to navigate that con. But New York Con, the fans are great. I mean, I love those panels. They always are appreciative, and I don't know. I always think it's because comics originated in New York City. Like comics in New York City are intertwined, really.
Absolutely.
And those fans seem more knowledgeable in general about how we do things. They seem more open to the creative process.
Interesting.
why we do what we do, and the questions kind of lean toward those kind of creative things. So I enjoy the panels. Not that I don't like any other panels, but those panels specifically tend to be less strange.
I understand what you're saying.
And the crowd is just so they're good natured, in a way that is just really it's always a kick to go there and preview or premiere something. But no, I haven't moderated anything.
Okay,
not yet.
Okay,
who knows?
What was the other panel you were on? Then?
I don't know. I was on it was Wonder Woman, and then we did a 20 years Batman Beyond.
Oh, that's great!
Coming out on Blu-ray.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's actually, man.
I'm going to attempt to remember the dates just to make Felicity happy. Oh no, I'm not. I forget. No, okay. The streets. It does street 10/27.
Oh, very cool. The week after Bloodlines.
Right. Yeah,
that's great.
I think the digital is 10/14, maybe.
Oh, next week.
I'm bad at that.
Yeah, no, it's
I
cool,
always
man.
believe that the actors who are on the panel are so good at memorizing. They know all that stuff.
Well, and Gary always knows.
And so it's always great. Yeah, they can do that, and so they always, it's like I'm so glad they are good at that. So, but anyway, so it's the remastered or cleaned up. It's weird because that particular series, in the middle of that series, was when we transitioned from painted cell to digital ink and paint.
Wow.
So
okay.
So there is definitely a difference. You can see. I think I've watched everything yet. I haven't got my copy, but I'm sure you can see there's a difference, and maybe the remastering has balanced it out because when we first got the digitized or the computer color shows, the color wasn't quite right. It didn't match the color we sent a little. It was a little lighter,
okay,
and a little too bright. So hopefully we'll see. I mean, it's just great. 20 years. When we were making that show, there was no way we thought in 20 years anyone would look back or care. I mean, we were definitely in the trenches on that one. And, what little internet there was initially was very hostile to just the idea of doing a Batman show where Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman. But
my God, what?
Now I know that if you make something earnestly and from the heart, it may not catch on in the time you're making it, but eventually, if it's remotely any good at all, you will find fans.
100%.
People will. But we didn't really know that back then. We thought we were ending our career.
No, but you're right.
Thought, well, we didn't. Well, I think we were committed to doing it. Once Bruce, Alan, and Paul sold us on the idea and that it wouldn't be invalidating BTAS or any of that, we kind of. It was like we had a bunker mentality of, okay, we're going to make this show whether anyone likes it or not, but we like it and we believe in it. And so that's kind of how we did it. And, but we had the feedback we were getting from all angles was not good initially.
Wow.
But again, the internet wasn't as it is now.
Sure.
So
dude,
we might have gotten more positive feedback or we might have had just a ton more hate, but
well, I don't know.
It was.
I know on the publishing side. I mean, God, I would go to these DC Nation panels at conventions, and people would say, "Hey, when are we going to get a Batman Beyond comic?" Because they loved what you guys did.
Yeah.
And I mean, and really, it was God. So when that was finally greenlit, that was terrific. And and also that final Justice League Unlimited episode that ties everything together. And Terry wants to know the truth about his origins and stuff. And we've talked about that before. It was so poetic. It really was. And again, it was that idea of, no, this all fits. And again, you guys made it all work and everything. I can only imagine, because of the level of unsophisticated cartoons that, kids were getting as things were devolving in Saturday morning cartoons, whatever original idea Batman Beyond was. But yeah, man, no, it was this... You guys opened this door of, well, where is everybody? Yeah, there's Bruce. But yeah, where is Tim? Where is Barbara? Where is Dick? I mean, where are these people? And it was great, and it was thrilling to watch. And just, I mean, the Return of the Joker animated film and everything. It was just like, oh my God, look at where you guys can go. That first episode, that pilot episode of Bruce's last case, and where he finally has to even whip out a gun to survive. you know, his last case and everything. Oh, I love that. I mean, that's what I mean, man. Like, it's those kind of story opportunities as an older viewer and stuff that it's like, wow, look at that. Oh my God, you know. And then that was that great link to the animated series and everything. So, it's
just it's funny because we were, you know, the reason we had to do Batman Beyond was because the old Batman they said wasn't, you know, it wasn't popping as much,
sure.
And they wanted something more kid friendly. And then the first scene in the movie or the pilot, he's pulling a gun out, and it's just, you know, it's just funny to me that the pretense of doing that show was to get a younger audience involved, and I guess we did. But again, the shows themselves don't reflect a pandering to younger audiences, especially that first season.
Sure. But you needed that kind of to see why.
It's a dark.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Then you needed something. You needed something to say. What happened to Batman? And yeah, it was dark, but it worked, man. Or at least it worked for me. And it was just like,
no,
you know,
it totally did.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, we always. I mean, the thing is, we always did. And again, this is a Warner Brothers tradition too, I guess. We did what appealed to us.
Absolutely.
We made the stuff we wanted to see, and we let the broadcast standards people tell us how far we could go or not go. And it just so happened at that time they were pretty lax, which was great for us. And you know, the following seasons, as a new regime came in, and it kind of tried to pull us back toward to Kidville.
Okay.
But you know, even then, the show's episodes where we were purposely trying to be a little younger skewing, still are subversive in their own way, like Egg Baby, and then even with that, when I got the script for Out of the Past, and I'm reading it, I'm like, this is twisted stuff, and you know, I mean, Ra's al Ghul has taken over Talia's body, and he, you know, that whole, it's like we were told basically to dumb it down, but we still couldn't, so. You know, that's been the case with all of the stuff we've done. You know, it's always make what you want to see, and then let everyone else sort it out.
Understand?
Let the repercussions come. You know how they, you know. But yeah, I mean, all those properties are ripe for renewal or revisiting.
Yeah.
And, you know,
it'd be amazing. But, it would be amazing, absolutely. But again, moving to the newer stuff, and like I said at the beginning, it's this level of, man, I'll tell you, God, rewatching Hush as I did this morning before talking to you and stuff, the level of sexuality, frankly, that you guys were allowed to have,
yeah.
I think it's great, man. You know, again, all the other countries, France and Japan, they have mature animation, and I'm sure it's been kind of a long, not struggle, but you know, just kind of gently pushing and saying, no, they're ready for this. And I know, again, at the beginnings of the direct-to-video animation, or OVA, as you guys, am I right? Is it OVA? Is that what you guys call it now?
That's what we don't call them that. I'm basing that on how anime, initially in the 90s.
I see.
When we started getting anime, connected movies and connected long forms. They were called OVAs. I know nothing about anime. Actually, anime. I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was like, if it was a cartoon or if it was an animation that was action oriented, I was going to buy it. So I bought a lot of that stuff. And also I was in animation, so I wanted to see how we could get what they were getting. But yeah, so the idea of mature. I mean, mature is probably a wrong word because people always claim, well, having sex doesn't mean mature.
Right.
But I'm like, but if you have two characters who are adults and they like each other and they're attracted to each other, it doesn't make sense to not show, particularly, and you're talking about Hush, Catwoman, and Batman. I mean, that's been so long. I mean, 1940, that's been the longest flirtation of...
Absolutely.
But I also think that just reading comics these days are ahead of where we seem to be allowed to be in the animation and what they depict.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I mean, I don't know that I've seen Batman and Catwoman in bed together in a comic, but I assume I have.
Oh yeah,
Maybe I haven't.
Oh yeah, Tom King especially in this current iteration. Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, they're in bed.
So
yeah.
I thought when we decided that, the original Hush,
comic.
I mean, how many issues?
12.
But how many issues was
12.
It seemed like it took 2 years for them to finish.
Yeah, well, Jim...
Am I remembering that right?
Jim's art took a while in the last couple issues. But yeah, it was 12 issues long.
Okay, so...
It was 12 issues.
So, when we, and I don't know if you're going to ask about this, but I know people, one of the things is we change stuff.
Sure you did.
And, it came about because, we realized if the crux of this story is supposed to be a mystery, the thing the comic book had in its favor was that it took 2 years to play out.
Yep.
You had a month. You had time to wonder about it, and so the viewer kind of filled in the gaps of who was Hush, and the few red herrings that were in the story served that purpose. But I don't know. I did read the condensed version, and I'm like, well, of course it's Thomas Elliot,
right?
Because you're reading it in the short time. You know what I'm saying? You're reading the complete version.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you.
You don't have those months and months of waiting.
Right.
And then, it becomes not a mystery.
I agree.
I'm like, well, this really isn't a mystery. And I remember people saying that at the time it was finished. But over the years, new readers come on, and I guess they don't care that it's not a mystery. They just like the story. But I'm like, what is it? So... as we were conceiving it, we realized we only have 80 minutes to tell the story, and the mystery part of it, if we tried to do that and just strictly lean into that, it'd be about as involving as a typical Scooby-Doo. I mean, you'd go, oh, of course it's the mayor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
If the one thing is the mystery of who Hush is, I didn't have that as an option really. I couldn't make that the sole motivation for the movie.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It is almost like a B plot. It's almost like a secondary thought. It wasn't that important to the overall movie. But the relationship with Catwoman and Batman, which when I reread the story, I went, it was kind of the B plot in the comic book.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, this is the thing we haven't done in a while, not since Mask of the Phantasm, was show Batman in a relationship.
A Batman love story, yes.
Yeah. And, Mask of the Phantasm, it was doomed.
Yes.
In a way, because she couldn't change. Andrea Beaumont couldn't change.
Yep.
And in Hush, I thought, well, flip it. Batman can't change.
Yep.
I mean, in Phantom, or Mask of the Phantasm, Batman was actually willing to change.
Yes.
He was contemplating not, he wanted. And so
that great scene in the study when he's looking at his parents' portrait, or he was at the crypt. I can't remember. And he's like, "Please, let me out of this, oath that I swore on your graves." Yeah. And it's I want to be a normal person. I have met someone. Oh, dude, I saw that in the theater. It was strong. Fantastic. It was beautiful. Very cinematic.
I did too. It was me and 2 other people.
Me too.
I mean,
in Chicago, it was the same thing.
I was like,
man. 5 people in the theater, but we were loving it.
Were you in Chicago? Maybe it was the same theater.
In Chicago.
It
was 6
up on Clark.
Yeah, well, no, actually, it was 6 Corners, and I'm blanking on the damn theater. They actually used the theater in that Johnny Depp, John Dillinger movie, not for the biograph scenes. But, they show him in a movie theater, and it is this same theater. And shame on me,
it's the same one?
But, it was on the Northwest side.
Chicago has such great theaters.
Well, and it was on...
I missed the Music Box.
Yeah, yes, of course, the Music Box, absolutely. But it was on the Northwest side, back where WXRT, the rock station I worked at, was. And it was me and the afternoon DJ and, 3 other people. And, oh, my God. And Saida Garrett singing the theme song and stuff, and... everything. We're like...
Totally forgot.
Oh, my God, man. We're like, holy shit, this is a movie. This is great. No, I tell Marty Pasco the same thing when I talk to him about Mask of the Phantasm. Yeah. And it really... Oh, it was so... Yeah. And again, this precursor of where we are now with these more sophisticated movies. I mean, that's what I'd say. Instead of mature, let's call them more sophisticated, because they are. They're more adult relationships and opportunities for adult storytelling. And like I said, I mean, again... I'm sure the animation, when you guys started, it was, no, this is going to be a kid product. We got to keep it clean. We got to do whatever. And it's like, well, no, man. This mature audience that showed up for not only the animated series, but certainly in the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited years, when it's a Y7 show, and all of us in our 30s and 40s are like, holy shit, this is a great... I mean, I have one of my best friends telling his wife, look, I know it's a cartoon, but you got to understand they're really telling a complex story here, and that's why we got to watch it.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right.
And I think, they undersell kids when they, granted, you don't want graphic violence. But the thing is, if the things you're showing come from a place of story integrity, meaning you're not just being gratuitous with the violence there's a certain level of action that kids, I won't speak for all kids, because kids are different now. I mean, they're being raised a lot more sensitively than we were.
Yes.
But, we used to say, well, it didn't hurt us, but then I'm like, oh, did it or didn't? Who knows? But we're just responsible about what we can show. And granted, that's because there's BS&P people who make us stay responsible. But, and it, as we move from network television, providing stuff for them, to more cable, like Cartoon Network, the standards become different. There's a little more, loose. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to make Justice League or Justice League Unlimited for Kids WB.
I understand.
Even though, ironically, it ended up on 4Kids later.
Yes, it did.
And I heard it was cut up, too. But
interesting. I didn't notice that, but I can see that, certainly. Sure.
Yeah, there's certain things they cut up.
Sure.
But anyway, back to Hush. It was like flipping the paradigm or the relationship in Mask of the Phantasm to where now Batman is stuck. He can't change. And it's about Catwoman wanting to... Yeah. She's changing herself for him.
Yes.
And he can't go along with it. And so, I mean, granted, I'm not comparing Hush to Mask of the Phantasm as far as that, but that was our impetus for adjusting the story to make it work in our running time.
But they're both tragedies.
And I think a Catwoman, but it's a tragedy from Catwoman. I think I wanted them to feel the audience to feel for both parties.
Sure.
I didn't want it. I mean, Batman is his code has kept him from having the happiness I think he really wants, and the connectedness and all that, and the same with Catwoman. Although she's not stuck, she just honestly fell in love with the dude who's unattainable.
Sure. And
so I think it humanizes her and him.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And I don't know. I stand by the changes. It was I was because I'm like, well, how could I have done it? Because the mystery just doesn't work. It wouldn't work in our running time, and as the way the story was structured, there was just no way. It would have only worked for the people who were sitting there, being the movie to the comic,
absolutely,
flipping pages. Going, okay, that's there, and that's not entertainment. That's not our mandate. Our responsibility is to tell to make a movie, and I always say. Comics don't always make good movies, and movies damn sure don't make good comics usually.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they're two totally different mediums that require different rules, and it's hard to get the average. The fan only knows a story is a story is a story.
Right.
They don't understand. A lot of them think they do, but they really don't. But anyway, I think we got to make a movie. It's based on this thing, but again, like any adaptation, I mean, how many classic movies that are based on novels reflect what the novel,
Yeah, man, no,
they got Mildred Pierce.
They got to make changes.
Yeah, there's no murder in Mildred Pierce.
That's right.
Or there's, it's a totally different story.
I hear you, man. Well, not till the end, at least.
It's a lot,
I love Mildred Pierce. That's hilarious, man. You're killing me. But no, you're right, man. And again, they have to be their own thing. And also, why would you want to watch something where where everything's going to happen? And I appreciate the ambition.
I don't know why that's... Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, man. I appreciate the ambition when you guys... Because the same thing happened with Killing Joke. And I know there were mixed feelings from the fans in terms of the changes that were made. And especially the prelude before you got to the Alan Moore story. And hey, man, Azraella's a buddy. And also, that's a tall order of making it work. And then also, again, the mature choices in that I think people were shocked by. But I appreciate that from the provocative ambition that you guys have of, well, wait a minute, they do work close together. These things do happen where suddenly, a relationship can start where it's a friendship or a mentorship, and then people do fall in love. Again, in this woke generation, it was it was controversial, but I can understand. Again, you're trying to tell a different story to surprise people and provoke people, I think, in a good way. I don't think there's nothing wrong with challenging an audience's expectations. And yeah, that's a gamble.
Right.
That is a gamble. But I always appreciate the effort.
I think, yeah.
Go on.
I mean, I didn't work on Killing Joke. Well, I did, actually. I storyboarded this Joker song.
I see.
Which I always forget. I'm like, I did work on it, but I didn't make any of the big,
story decisions.
Calls. It's for story decisions, but I understand why they did them. And that whole Batgirl Batman thing, that was already done or alluded to in Batman Beyond.
Yes.
And then followed up in Mystery of the Batwoman. So the idea of them being a couple has already been established. And so I don't know specifically, but I kind of think that, with the casting of Mark and Kevin as Batman and Joker in it, they were kind of doing a BTAS, pocket universe thing where it was like, okay, that theme of them dating, we're going to show that it's not going to be designed like BTAS or anything, but it's kind of a BTAS extension in its own way. And I don't know. I know it's weird when I was watching it in the audience at Comic-Con. I heard the audible gag.
Sure.
And of people not knowing how to process it.
Right.
And it's so weird because when I was a younger fan and all we had was, Saturday morning television or the kind of, I remember as a young adult fan, like, late teens, early 20s, thinking, oh, if only we could do more if only they made more mature.
Yeah.
That was a mantra where we felt like everything was kiddified and dumbed down and everything. And now we're getting, I think, a wide variety of tones and treatments, and I guess all the other dudes who were with me are now dads, and so they're like, "Oh, it's too violent. Oh, it's too low. I wish they wouldn't." I'm like, when did you join the other side? Because when I was in college or in the comic book store as a young adult, we complained.
Right.
We complained about not having the reality we have now, like the idea that anything, we can have different treatments for the same material. Mature, there's for every Killing Joke, there's Brave and the Bold cartoon. There's a variety now of treatment, and not everything has to be suited for someone's 10-year-old.
Agreed.
And it's just funny that they forget, because every fan dad or mom, I'm like, okay, you were young once and you didn't like that Super Friends was our only alternative for this stuff,
Yep.
We all complained about it, so I'm like, what I just, don't forget where you came from.
I hear you, man.
Monitor what you're showing your kid. But for Killing Joke, I think the average fan, though, meaning the person whose only knowledge of Batgirl and Batman, may only be Yvonne Craig.
Right, sure.
Or, they may not watch cartoons or, but the way Killing Joke was proposed, or, if you're in the Target or whatever and you see a DVD or Blu-ray with Joker on the cover and looking like, a Brian Boland drawing, which you may not have seen if you didn't read comics, that's a catchy thing. So you're going into something that's not Cesar Romero and stuff.
Absolutely, man.
But, if you, looking back at the old, 66 show, there was a flirtation of sorts between Batman and Batgirl.
Agreed.
Adam West,
absolutely.
He said there,
Absolutely.
And, so I think for the average non-comic book fan viewer, that what happened in that scene between them wasn't necessarily shocking, because that's the kind of scene you would see in any kind of movie, where it's, the scene itself wasn't shocking as much as it was the characters who were doing it. But if it was like a buddy cop movie and, a male and female character kind of were attracted to each other and ended up doing something that maybe they shouldn't have, it would be acknowledged as a mistake and move on,
Yep.
it wasn't, people kind of took it in this way as an affront, where I'm like, can't she be, I mean, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. Would I have done it if I had been producing it? Maybe not,
No, I hear you, man.
But
yeah, and
I don't think it was a, yeah.
Well, I'm not
I don't think it was invalid.
Yeah, and maybe because I'm single, I still remember that wish of more sophisticated, air quote sophisticated, but more mature and more nuanced characterization that, again, I think, like you said, sometimes comics lead with those kind of things before it can, and the idea of doing it in American animation is still a relatively new idea that people need to get used to. They obviously were watching the animated series. A lot of these young adults were watching it when they were kids, so maybe that was a little disturbing to them, I suppose. I'm shrugging. I was already in my 20s when this stuff was happening, so it didn't, the original animated series and everything, so it didn't bother me. But it's cool. And again, I appreciate the idea of provocative storytelling, and I think in general we're ready for that in animation. And I still have that feeling of, yes, please give us more complex stories. So if we can, and I feel bad, I'm slightly taking you over your time. Can we really quick talk about Wonder Woman Bloodlines? Because I really feel this is a great, it's a great opportunity, obviously, especially with the movie coming out now, of exploring the seeds that you planted, I think, in things like Reign of the Superman and stuff, where you get a more mature Diana, and a Diana that's working out her relationships with the outside world beyond Themyscira and everything.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the thing about Wonder Woman is that everyone, ever since the Linda Carter show, which didn't really give her much of an inner life, it was very episodic, but, they haven't really done anything with her in media where she has a backstory, or what is she doing when she's not with the Justice League?
Right, yeah.
I mean, even in our Justice League Unlimited, we only had a few select episodes where we gave her some room to show who she is, but still we didn't show much of her supporting cast or anything.
Yep.
And so I knew if I ever got a chance to do a Wonder Woman movie, I wasn't going to lean into the mythology angle as much, because that's been covered, I wanted to show her with Steve for sure, and Etta.
Sure, yep.
Because the thing that I always complain about Wonder Woman is every time a new creative team takes over the comic, they throw out everything the last guy did.
You're right.
And I contend that it was a bad idea to lose Steve Trevor, in the 70s or whenever they killed him off, 60s.
Yep, yeah.
Because it was an overreaction to saying she's her own woman, she doesn't need a man.
Right.
Well, no one said that, Superman didn't need a Lois Lane. Like Lois Lane informs who Superman is, and sometimes they're involved romantically, but sometimes they're just friends, and I think that's good. You need those touchstone characters, and so I knew that I wanted to evolve her relationship with Steve, and since we made a point of showing that Steve was a little put out when Wonder Woman and Superman were an item in the very first Justice League War. We showed Steve's sense of disappointment. And now we have context for it because we have a prologue that shows that Steve and her had kind of a bond, but it wasn't initially romantic yet. It was an attraction, but they didn't do it,
they didn't hook up yet.
They didn't fall in love. Yeah, they didn't hook up. So they didn't hook up until after Diana and Clark, went their separate ways. But again, we didn't know that. I mean, it's all in between the lines.
Interesting.
I mean, we don't have scenes actually spell it out, but that, we set it up and again, we set it up not knowing it would pay off. Like, I didn't know we were going to do a Wonder Woman movie. I was hoping, but when we did Justice League War, the Wonder Woman live action movie was, I guess, in the works, but it wasn't part of any reality for us that we could, plan for. So anyway, things like having Steve and Etta, I mean, looking at the really solid runs of her comic book, primarily the Perez run, which was masterful.
100%, man. Yeah.
Perez and Len Wein, and I mean, there's a lot of people worked on it, but Perez was he spearheaded it.
Oh, absolutely, that was his book.
It.
Yeah.
and Greg Rucka's
Love
run,
Greg's run.
which is it gives it, and the things that those two runs did were, it wasn't all about action. It was about the world building. It was about what Diana was like as a person that they leaned into, and that was the magic of those particular books or runs. And so we definitely wanted to, sample a little bit from each, the tones and some of the, relationship things. I mean, the movie itself is basically us synthesizing that stuff but making it our own for what we needed for our continuity, but it kind of fit together that way. And also the other thing, besides giving our supporting cast, is, again, I say, Batman, Superman, they have a constant supporting cast that follows them no matter what iteration you give them. There's always going to be some form of Perry White, Jimmy, Lois,
the planet,
Alfred,
and for Batman, Alfred, and Dick, and Tim, and that core.
Whereas Wonder Woman never has always been denied, and always given these new people, and I'm like, some of them were great. Some that if I ever did a Wonder Woman series, I would sample from her whole line of continuity, because within each writer's attempt to redefine her, there's little kernels of things that put together could make a really strong ensemble kind of cast of characters that could be in her world. It's just, the editorial on Wonder Woman has always been kind of dodgy.
Schizophrenic.
She didn't have she didn't really have anyone like Julie Schwartz guiding her, I think. And he may have edited the book for a while at some point, but I'm just that old-time editor-in-chief who guided that character.
Oh, God,
and decided.
Yeah, from the 40s when it was a cool, hardcore thing to the 50s, and Robert Kanigher was the principal writer, and it was Lois Lane with powers, and literally man-hungry Wonder Woman, when is Steve Trevor going to marry me?
Yeah.
And then, the different iterations. I mean, Greg and I have talked about that as well, and it really took, starting with Perez, and then when Greg worked on it, Alan Heinberg's short run had, like you said, I think kernels of great ideas in that. And Phil Jimenez, as we mentioned earlier, had flashes of brilliance. So no, you're right, and I agree. But again, it is always, as you say, whenever a new team takes over, they wipe out what the previous team did and start something new. So no, that's why I say it's very schizophrenic in terms of their presentation of Woman. And thank God we had the movie that Patty Jenkins made, and I'm really excited about the next movie too. So I would imagine, tonally, does it inform Bloodlines, the Patty Jenkins stuff?
Well, actually, it informed it a lot more than we realized, because our original pass on Bloodlines, instead of Silver Swan, it was going to be a cheetah story.
Oh, wow.
Which, in hindsight, I'm so glad. It was more of a Wonder Woman's friendship with Barbara Minerva, and it becomes a redemption of her. But we didn't realize that's broad strokes that the cheetahs in the live action. I guess that's been announced, right?
Yeah, for the next one,
with Kristen Wiig, So we couldn't do that story, which in hindsight, now side, I guess, I'm so glad we weren't able to, because Cheetah's the one villain that tends to make these animated movies and series. I mean, she's the most visual villain that Wonder Woman has, and she's kind of an easy go-to ever since Challenge of the Super Friends. But I think we kind of overused her, and so I'm so glad we weren't, because I was going to go along with it, because I'm like, this is a story about this character, maybe it'll be deeper, but I think we got so much more making it a character that was younger, Silver Swan, and more vulnerable, and we got to use Julia. We got to use a lot of the Perez stuff on the front end because of it. And when I say a lot, I just mean that whole setup of Wonder Woman learning about America through Julia, kind of mentoring her. And taking the time on the front end to be a little slower, to build it. Because the thing about Wonder Woman is she's an action character, but I think you miss a lot when you just focus on the swords and which that's even a new thing. I don't think I personally don't like Wonder Woman using a sword unless she absolutely has to. But and so we were very careful about when she used anything besides her physical power. But I'm jumping all over.
No, it's all
but
good.
Yeah, we started
it's
out.
It's all good. Go on.
Yeah, but just the thing about Wonder Woman is the relationships she has are central to her character. Meaning the emotional connection she has with people.
Yeah.
It's not like Superman's where it's a friendly thing. He's everyone's best bud. She is really invested in almost everyone who's in her life in a way that the other Trinity isn't.
I understand.
At least overtly, she cares, and so to her, she has to make a connection with Julia and Vanessa in a deeper way, and it's a sisterhood and all that, and so that everything that happens in the rest of the movie, her motivations make sense. Why is she going out of her way to redeem this person? Well, the person's someone she loves, and that's the kind of thing where I think some more comic book fans, I won't tar them all with that brush, but some maybe male fans, maybe I shouldn't do that either, but they're impatient with sometimes the way Wonder Woman needs to be treated when she's properly depicted, because she's compassionate, and compassion isn't exciting.
I understand. Yep.
to people, to some people.
Yep.
But to do her right, you really have to lean into it. And I think sometimes, even we've been guilty of this, where we don't make Wonder Woman as compassionate as she needs to be in certain situations. We lean into the warrior goddess thing, and she can come off a little bit cold. And I definitely wanted to avoid that. I really wanted her to be empathetic, to have all those attributes that Diana has in the comics usually, and so that necessitated kind of a slower front end of the movie where we're building those relationships.
Interesting.
And the idea that she doesn't necessarily want to. She doesn't want to use her power to stop someone if she can reason with them.
Absolutely.
I mean, granted, you can't do a whole movie. You can't do a whole movie like that. But that's something that the feature film captured very
100%.
well. And so I wanted to make sure we at least kept that consistent.
Well, like you said, she's different.
Because
she's different than Superman and Batman. But go on, other movies. Continue your thought.
Well, I just think in Justice League, because it's more of an ensemble piece, none of the characters are as true to themselves as the way they would be in their own story. Meaning, Batman suddenly becomes more rigid in Justice League because he's got to play off the Boy Scout, which Superman is more of in Justice League. And then Wonder Woman becomes more of the warrior tactician rather than the compassionate person, because that's just the roles. And then Flash becomes the comic relief, and the format of Justice League kind of neutralizes their edges a little bit, so they're not as what's the word? They don't have as much agency as they do in their own. I hate that word.
I'm with you though. Like their individualism, and again, it's like I said, like I started to say too. Yeah, man. I mean, it's like you said, the Trinity. They all act from different parts of humanity. And yes, I agree with you that, in fact, when going back to the comics with Rucka, when they had Wonder Woman kill Max Lord, and Batman and Superman are like, what the hell? And Lois cut through it, and it's all subtext. But I remember Greg talking at panels and saying, he goes, God, I would have written the scene where Lois tells Clark, you idiot, stop treating her badly. She did that for you. She loves you. She had no choice. And yes, it was a warrior move, but it was motivated by her love of Superman in terms of, I can't let my brother, go down like this. Right. And that's great. And again,
and to me,
that's terrific. Yeah. That's what makes them unique. And I think that's, I don't blame you for leaning into that aspect of her that is different from Superman and Batman.
Yeah. And later on in the movie, she's trying to keep Vanessa from being taken over by I don't know, it would probably be a spoiler, but she's there's mind control involved. And anyway, there's a really heartfelt, Wonder Woman has this heartfelt, I won't say it's a speech, but she just basically lays out, I'm not going to give up on you because you are worth more than what you think you are. And
awesome.
those kind of things, Wonder Woman is a healer.
Yeah.
She's, she's a warrior and stuff. And I also think the warrior stuff is so much better when she's coming from a place of compassion. Because when she is forced, like you said, into the corner where she has to take the harsh choice, she makes the choice.
Yep.
So it's like, so it means she's not just a murderer. That's the other thing about that particular scene in the comic you were talking about, that she had to make that choice. She made the choice she knew as a warrior that ultimately you have to make when all other alternatives are gone. And you're right, she did it out of love. So I think her being a badass, when she's a badass,
sure,
she's doing it from a different point of view than Superman and Batman.
Absolutely.
Where, Batman is motivated by vengeance and not wanting anyone ever to suffer the way he suffered. It's not selfish, but it's an internal.
Yes.
I'm doing this because I don't want anyone else to go through what I'm going.
Absolutely.
And Superman is doing. I'm doing this because I was raised to be this.
Yep.
Way. She's doing it because she doesn't want anyone. Because she loves them.
Yes. No. Literally.
It's it's more of a. Yeah. So and it's a subtle distinction that sometimes gets lost when we're doing animation, because you don't have word balloons over people's heads telling you why they're doing certain things. So you kind of have to. It's a little harder to depict in
animation,
in film, and in animation than comics has.
I was going to say that's why, and I know Rosario is a brilliant actress, and I'm glad that she's doing this, and I think Susan brings that same level of empathy that is subtext in their delivery. And you're right, man, because even animation, because of the limits of animation and stuff, you can't get a complex look on a character's face. It kind of sometimes is a dead face, and it takes the voice actor to bring out that characterization.
Yes.
And again, I think Rosario and Susan are great examples of people that make that happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Rosario in this particular piece, because again, she's only been Wonder Woman in the context of the Justice League,
right?
And so she was written a little differently. The compassionate side, the empathetic side wasn't as present. She leaned into the warrior stuff because that's pretty much all we gave her.
That was her role.
For the most part.
Yeah.
That was her role as an ensemble. So I was like, I knew she could because she's a great actress.
Absolutely.
But it was great to see her tackle the more Wonder Woman-y specific stuff, like, the relationship stuff, the warmth, just the stuff we know Wonder Woman to have that sometimes gets lost in Justice League type stories.
Sure.
She really rose to the challenge and nailed it, of course. And then it was so weird was that the front end of the movie is kind of light on action, or it's not particularly. It's more the emotion stuff that we build up
Gotcha.
to. And then the third act is brutal, and I when she's recording her stuff, the fight efforts alone. I mean, she's pretty much getting beaten up the whole third act. She's fighting. And that session was really intense. Just
interesting,
but she never wavered. And when you think about it, like going back to what I said about actors kind of embodying the character they're playing, I mean, she's such a great ambassador for representing Wonder Woman because she's a comic book fan.
Yes, she is.
She's compassionate that way. She's very much about justice in her own life and in her own. Politics and stuff. So I don't know. She was a great. She was a real great boon to as casting for these movies.
When I
and the fact that she would come and play with us even in this, sometimes she would have just Wonder Woman was not a big part of a story, but she wouldn't mind coming in and being part of that. And I'm glad we were able to reward her with giving her a full movie to really show her. To show Wonder Woman off, really.
I hear you, man. No, and again, I met her in my first San Diego back in 2006 when she had a comic that she was doing with the 12 Gauge Studio.
Yeah, yeah.
And and she.
The thing about her is she remembers people. I mean, she's not.
Oh, that's cool.
She's not just fronting. She's real. She is a lot like Wonder Woman. When you talk to her, she is definitely invested in talking to you.
I got that. Yes.
And there's not a lot of that actory, stuff you get. She is really excited and energetic. I mean, there's, she's definitely special because she just exudes light.
Understand, which is exactly what you want from Wonder Woman. Absolutely, man. And again,
yeah, and I'm to say the same about Susan and
Gal Gadot. Certainly,
those are the main. Yes, well, yeah, it comes off of them, and even the Linda Carter you could go back to.
Absolutely. No, it's cool, man. And I love, I noticed on Twitter, obviously, you changed your avatar to that great picture of you and Rosario, too, and that's terrific. And I'm glad that it was...
Yeah. Well, she looks better than I did. And so I was like, oh, God. That was at dinner after a few cocktails, and so I was like, she's about to leave, I better get a picture. Well, I think I have probably... I know I have other pictures of us together, but I was like, you never know because these movies, we make them so far apart. I don't know when the next time I'll see
man.
it.
No, I get it. No, and she's so magnetic. I know, man. When I got to talk to her at her table.
Well, and she's so beautiful.
Yes.
I mean,
oh my God.
I mean, I felt like a total hunchback. Not that there's anything wrong with hunchbacks. But
I know what you mean, James.
Oh my God.
I know. We all feel like the awkward freshman at the mixer, and it's like we're talking to the prom queen. I'm hip, man. I'm hip.
Yeah, totally.
I understand. And again, beyond the physical thing, like you said, she makes connections because she had just been on Conan, and Conan was kind of playing down his like almost embarrassed by his nerdness when he was talking to her. And I told her that. She's like, "Oh no, he's hardcore, man. He's one of us." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great, man. You think you're one of us too? That's great. Okay, I believe you."
Oh, she totally does, and she, like we always when she comes in to record, she's always excited. But she'll, before we actually can start, we actually have we have conversations, and whatever she's currently into and excited about is what we will hear about, and she gets you up. She's just she's unique. I just give her that. There's not a sense of jadedness about her at all.
Excellent.
Which is so refreshing, and again, she's just one of those people that shoots light out of themselves.
Yeah, man. No, I mean,
and it's not calculated or anything. She literally is just who she is, and it's nice. And we couldn't have cast a better Wonder Woman in that for these particular projects. So.
Absolutely, man. Real fast, did you see Joker, the movie?
Okay, the simple answer is no.
Okay.
So I won't get into the sticks because I don't know. On the surface of it, I'm probably one of those that's biased against not seeing it.
I understand. In other words, you don't necessarily want to see it. Are you saying that, or it was kind of a double negative? So I want to make sure I'm clear on your meaning. But yeah, okay. You're not alone, obviously. I know a lot of people who feel that way. Go on.
The way they're pitching it, and I'm a good company guy overall.
Man. Of course you are.
I have a priority. I'm very a purist when it comes to Joker as a character. And I mean, this wouldn't be the only depiction of Joker in recent years that I've had issues.
I'm with you, man.
So but it's not. It doesn't look like the kind of movie I would enjoy. Although I respect, from what I'm hearing, that it's a well-made. Whatever it is, it's well-made. But no, I can't. I'm not. I mean, I'm sure someday I'll see it, but I'm not rushing out.
I hear you, man.
Part of it has to do with I end up having to make content with these same characters, and I don't like being influenced any more than I already have to be by other people's takes on.
I get it. Yeah. No, man, and I'll tell you, I had mixed feelings about it. I think for the same reasons in terms of, and that's what I said in my spoiler review in my last episode. I'm like, look, I've seen too many Batman Joker stories, so I kind of have a feeling in my head of the right way to do the Joker, and I appreciate this as an alternate universe take, but by the same token, I'm over-informed in the same way that I think some people that have problems with the newer Star Wars movies, because I appreciate the feeling the feeling about critiques where it's like, well, that's not how I would have told the story, and that's not what I'm saying when I have these feelings. It's just that you can't help it. It's like being a Sherlock Holmes fan and knowing the Holmes Moriarty dynamic, and then it's presented in a different way.
Yeah, Yeah, totally. And like Star Wars is a good example of where I am a casual Star Wars.
Me too.
I saw them all once. Well, Empire I've seen more than all of them. And, it's my favorite one. And so for me, and maybe because I was an other, meaning Luke Skywalker didn't represent me in any way.
Okay.
He was just someone I was watching. But he wasn't, I didn't see myself in him. I didn't see myself in many people in Star Wars, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. So when the things happened in The Last Jedi, I didn't take them. I think a lot of people took them personally because that character represented them in the first movie at a time when they were probably close to the same age, maybe.
Absolutely, yes.
And so the fact that the story for him in Last Jedi is kind of I won't say sad, but it's a little too close to home with people where they are now in their lives, meaning that sense of resignation or whatever, or that it, their mortality.
The line that Robert Redford uses in The Natural that always sends a chill up my spine when Glenn Close says, "What happened to you, Roy?" And he's like, "My life didn't turn out the way I expected." And it really does kind of explain the first 40 minutes of the movie where it's like, wow, look where this guy is who thought he was going to be a bonus baby and immediately a baseball star and has had to, sweat it out in the minors best he can and just kind of shuffle along life. And this is really his last chance. Yeah. So, no, I know what you mean, that dejection of middle age, frankly, that some of us may experience.
But also, I think it's also a sense of accepting one's limitations in a way and saying, okay, now it's time to let someone else carry it on or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Because I wasn't that. I don't, and I'm not poo-pooing people's criticism of that movie. I happen to enjoy it for what it was, but it's not. Star Wars isn't in my DNA like it is some of my peers.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the reaction was emotional, apart from whether it was well made or not. I mean, there were some things I thought weren't great about it, but a lot of the things people seem to dislike, I didn't mind at all. I enjoyed the movie. I mean, I don't know what to say, but but again, I'm not. But in the same way, going back to the Joker, I have a specific way of thinking about the Joker, and when something conflicts with that, I'll even go back to the '89 Burton movie, in that Joker conflicts with my view of Joker in a way. And so I don't, and again, Cesar Romero, everyone rags on him, but I mean, he was, to me, the closest version to what the comic book at the time was presenting Joker as, up until that point.
Oh, no, I love Cesar Romero. Go on.
And I mean, I'm like, if you were in an elevator and Cesar Romero as the Joker stepped in the elevator, you'd be as freaked out as you would if it was Heath Ledger or, Jared Leto, or, I mean, I would be probably more so because he actually acts like a regular person. He's a little, but he's not licking his lips and, he's not acting like a ghoul like Heath Ledger's. Well, James, like Heath Ledger acts like.
Yeah, but you and I probably saw the original Adam West show when we were really little kids, and in 1982, Cesar Romero was making an unsold TV pilot with Ann Gillian. And it was crazy, and he played a polka band leader or whatever. It was a Fred Silverman production, and I met him.
I didn't know.
It was called.
Oh, really?
It was called the Rainbow Girl, and it was like this blue collar family in a working class city, maybe Cleveland or whatever. And Ann Gillian had like a job during the day, but at night she was a singer for Cesar Romero's polka band, and she was called the Rainbow Girl. I know, I mean, just knucklehead sitcom. But we got to meet the cast, and I met Cesar Romero, and I told him, I said, sir, because it was this bad. When I was 4 years old, I couldn't watch Joker episodes of Batman because he scared the hell out of me. And I told him that, and he laughed, and he said, good, I was supposed to scare you. And it was a great moment, and I got to meet him. And, my stepmother, who I don't stay in contact with, might still have the photos. But, yeah, it was so great meeting him. And yeah, man, no, you're right. I mean, the best versions of the Joker are dangerous and random. And this
Random,
movie presents a very different.
But also,
character.
I think eloquent in their own
100%.
way. Like the Joker doesn't walk around thinking he looks weird.
Oh, well, no.
You know, he doesn't. I mean, he's just who he is. And I mean, like, at least that's the way Cesar played it. Because there's one episode where he talks to his henchman and says, you know, why are you so vain? I never look at myself in the mirror. You know, like he's contained and he's comfortable in who he. Whatever. That's a little too deep for the. But I don't know. It's so weird because when we were doing Brave and the Bold, and we decided to put Joker in the show, the Heath Ledger version had been out, and so. You know, we ended up with Jeff Bennett, who nailed it. But we went through a few people just trying to figure out who could do it.
Who your Joker was going to be, sure.
The Heath Ledger version had infected so many people's idea of Joker. And, of course, it was totally, completely not what I wanted for Brave and the Bold, that it was hard to get people off of it. You know, I'm like, don't do that, you know? So, Joker's, in the context of these movies, just last thing on him is that he's the hardest character to cast appropriately.
Did you like?
And if you
go on, because I was going to ask about, and forgive me, no, finish your thought, and then I'll ask the question. I'm sorry, James.
Well, I was just saying he's one of those characters of all of the most recast. You can even do this with Mark Hamill because he's Joker because he replaced someone. I mean, we all know who, but I don't have to go into that. But
okay. I don't remember. Is it public knowledge?
The Joker,
is it public knowledge who it was?
Yeah, well, it's the guy who everyone thought would be a perfect Joker when we were in college. Tim Curry.
Oh, of course, yeah, sure, and that you can see that. Certainly.
Yeah, that's public knowledge. I'm not.
Yeah. No disrespect to the brilliance of Tim Curry, a fantastic actor. My God.
Yeah.
So go on.
It just But anyway, I will just say that through doing all these movies and just hearing stories about other productions where that is the character who is the hardest to cast because of people's either preconceived ideas about him or they're maybe based on Cesar Romero or their need to either mimic Cesar or to not do Cesar at all, and they don't really come up with anything valid. But then we land on the people who really nail it. Like, I think John DiMaggio's Joker is very
James, that's where I was going, man. I was going to ask, and I agree with you. It was coming from left field. It was a beefier, more physically intimidating Joker, but he got the crazy right. Yeah. And I love that Under the Red Hood movie, and I've talked to Winnick about it before as well. Yeah, and oh my God, no! And I've talked to John as well on the Brave and Bold red carpet. One of the last times I saw you at the Paley Center, and got to talk to John. And also, John came on to talk about his voiceover documentary he made. And I'm like, and I said the same thing. Yes, so I know that voice for people listening that don't remember the episode that I talked to John, but it's. No, I'm like, John, I literally said the same thing. I said, you're a very underrated Joker. I said, you really brought something fresh, but absolutely consistent with where you could see the character being this way, and it absolutely worked in Under the Red Hood. He was amazing.
Yeah, and he's doing his own thing. He's not doing Mark. He's not doing Cesar Romero. He's not doing Heath Ledger. I think his Joker is kind of like Heath Ledger in that he has that crime boss quality. Yes. He's kind of his Joker's kind of a thug.
Yes.
He's physically menacing as well as,
calculating.
Deranged.
But also
but he looks a little more monstrous.
Yeah, and and like you said too, like Heath Ledger's performance, he's more of a crime boss. And also mean you could, and that's again, I don't mean, I liked what Joaquin Phoenix did with what he was given. I didn't see that character evolving into someone that could face Batman. I'm sure.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah. I mean, now I'm curious just to... I'm sure I'll
it's worth seeing. It is worth seeing. I mean, it's interesting.
And I think and not to get political, but just where we are now in the world is kind of a scary time for me, and I'm like, I don't need any more reason to be scared. or nervous. Nervous is more like unsteady. I feel very, what's going to happen next,
I hear you,
that kind of thing. And so maybe that's why this movie is very timely. I don't know, but it's not what I'm ready for.
No, I understand. I hear you, man. Well, James, we're almost at 2 hours, and again, you're incredibly generous with your time.
Sure.
And but you know something? It was such a deep conversation, and I love the places where it went. Even your tangents, where you're like, "Wait a minute, I'm off subject." I'm like, "No, that was great."
Yeah.
So truly, I really,
cool.
honestly, man, the keepers of characters are the writers. As much as I appreciate the actors and stuff, if you want to know what makes these characters tick, you go to the guys that are writing the stories, and you're one of those guys. And also, again, as American animation evolves and becomes more adult-friendly, I think that's great. And because there shouldn't be any restrictions, just like there aren't for books or any form of storytelling that are out there. So thankfully, truly, and I mean this, I'm glad that there are guys like you out there that are pushing the envelope and really saying, no, wait a minute, let's hopefully the bosses aren't looking our way, and we could do something that's entertaining us. and really, the best cartoons are the subversive ones, going back to Rocky and Bullwinkle and Termite Terrace and all that stuff, man. So thank you, really. Yeah. I mean, and then Wonder Woman Bloodlines out on DVD and Blu-ray on the 22nd, and the following week, and now I'm sadly blanking. Oh, it's the 10th anniversary of Batman Beyond, and so that's amazing too. And really, man, I'm like I said at the beginning, I'm so happy for you that you're getting to do what you want to do and are an important voice in modern animation. So thank you for your contributions and continued success, and please come back. Let's not make it years between our next conversation.
Sure. Yeah. I have no shortage of rambling opinions.
So there you go, James Tucker. Don't forget, the Batman Beyond 20th Anniversary DVD series is out tomorrow. Wow. How about it, man? And next week, October 22nd, is Wonder Woman Bloodlines. James Tucker, a huge part of both of those things. Interesting, and I wonder what the original concept of Batman Beyond was going to be. And thank God the creatives were there to make it the very special series that it became. And very intrigued by what we're getting with Wonder Woman Bloodlines. It's also already out on digital. You should go check that out. It's available at iTunes, Amazon, everywhere where you can buy digital video, Vudu, etc. But the physical DVDs for Wonder Woman Bloodlines and Blu-rays come out next week, the 22nd. James Tucker on today's Word Balloon. I hope you enjoyed it. It was all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for sponsoring me via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon, or go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, is it worth $1 to you a month? Is it worth $3 a month, the price of a comic book? See if you can do it. If you can, I really appreciate the support. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners. And Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Hey, man, one of the real eye-opening publishers of the last couple of years. They have made their stamp with A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis and Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, Tim Seeley's Dark Red, Dark Arc from Cullen Bunn and Knights Temporal, Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, Stronghold from Phil Hester and Ryan Kelly. Great stuff, man. Great creators, great comic books that deserve your attention. And those are on their website, man. I'm telling you, we're going to talk to more Aftershock creators about their books, but you don't have to wait. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and diamond codes on how to order those books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening today. Again, our companion podcast, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I examine his essay in Hollywood Reporter, his response to Martin Scorsese's complaints. You know, Jennifer Aniston getting on the bandwagon. Jodie Foster last year, was kind of complaining about the comic book movies. Those aren't the problems. It's the studios that have decided they want these movies because they generate bigger money and interest. The mid-level budget movies, as you very well know, are surviving on streaming. And again, Scorsese himself having Netflix fund The Irishman is a prime example of that. Things like also Late Night and Manchester by the Sea and all these other successful films that are being funded by Amazon and the streaming companies. Our own Greg Rucka is going to have The Old Guard next year on Netflix with Charlize Theron. Very excited to see how that pans out. But this is where the mid-budget movie has gone. And also, more complicated stories are being told on streaming television. So, Jennifer Aniston, you got your thing on Apple coming up. That's a bigger canvas than any film can provide for you. And frankly, you've had a better television career than you had a film career. Maybe, kind of think about that. Also, God, they're even making a sequel to that Sandler movie that she made last year for Netflix, the murder mystery comedy that they did. So, I don't understand why they're complaining. This stuff is still being made. It's just the platform has moved. And maybe, and there's still great, interesting, intriguing films that have nothing to do with superheroes. Man, I'm excited for Knives Out. And now I'm blanking on his name. The guy who made Last Jedi. His new movie and everything. The Brooklyn 50s movie with Ed Norton where he has Tourette's and he's solving a mystery. God, I saw those trailers for when I saw the Joker movie, and both of them look incredible. I'm going to go see those in the theater. Guess what? Rom-coms and other things, it's like they've become kind of ordinary. And unfortunately, because of the DVD and cable and now streaming business, we don't have to rush to the theaters to see these movies like we did 20 years ago. I'm sorry, you've gone by the way of the horse and buggy. Deal with it. But anyway, I talk about it more on the Kareem episode if you want to hear it. And I'll be interested in your thoughts as well on these subjects as more. What do you think of the Joker movie, man? It's still buzzing in my head, and I'm sure I'll still have conversations with creatives when I have a chance to talk to them. Wasn't it interesting to hear James say that he wasn't interested in seeing the Joker movie? Very, very interesting. Again, interesting, polarizing film. Comic book movie, sorry. But it'll be certainly part of the conversation in the days and weeks ahead right here on Word Balloon. Thanks a lot for listening. More great content coming for you in October. In the meantime, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019. So there you go, James Tucker. Don't forget, the Batman Beyond 20th Anniversary DVD series is out tomorrow. Wow. How about it, man? And next week, October 22nd, is Wonder Woman Bloodlines. James Tucker, a huge part of both of those things. Interesting, and I wonder what the original concept of Batman Beyond was going to be. And thank God the creatives were there to make it the very special series that it became. And very intrigued by what we're getting with Wonder Woman Bloodlines. It's also already out on digital. You should go check that out. It's available at iTunes, Amazon, everywhere where you can buy digital video, Vudu, etc. But the physical DVDs for Wonder Woman Bloodlines and Blu-rays come out next week, the 22nd. James Tucker on today's Word Balloon. I hope you enjoyed it. It was all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for sponsoring me via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon, or go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, is it worth $1 to you a month? Is it worth $3 a month, the price of a comic book? See if you can do it. If you can, I really appreciate the support. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners. And Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Hey, man, one of the real eye-opening publishers of the last couple of years. They have made their stamp with A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis and Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, Tim Seeley's Dark Red, Dark Arc from Cullen Bunn and Knights Temporal, Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, Stronghold from Phil Hester and Ryan Kelly. Great stuff, man. Great creators, great comic books that deserve your attention. And those are on their website, man. I'm telling you, we're going to talk to more Aftershock creators about their books, but you don't have to wait. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and diamond codes on how to order those books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening today. Again, our companion podcast, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I examine his essay in Hollywood Reporter, his response to Martin Scorsese's complaints. Jennifer Aniston getting on the bandwagon. Jodie Foster last year, was kind of complaining about the comic book movies. Those aren't the problems. It's the studios that have decided they want these movies because they generate bigger money and interest. The mid-level budget movies, as you very well know, are surviving on streaming. And again, Scorsese himself having Netflix fund The Irishman is a prime example of that. Things like also Late Night and Manchester by the Sea and all these other successful films that are being funded by Amazon and the streaming companies. Our own Greg Rucka is going to have The Old Guard next year on Netflix with Charlize Theron. Very excited to see how that pans out. But this is where the mid-budget movie has gone. And also, more complicated stories are being told on streaming television. So, Jennifer Aniston, you got your thing on Apple coming up. That's a bigger canvas than any film can provide for you. And frankly, you've had a better television career than you had a film career. Maybe, kind of think about that. Also, God, they're even making a sequel to that Sandler movie that she made last year for Netflix, the murder mystery comedy that they did. So, I don't understand why they're complaining. This stuff is still being made. It's just the platform has moved. And maybe, and there's still great, interesting, intriguing films that have nothing to do with superheroes. Man, I'm excited for Knives Out. And now I'm blanking on his name. The guy who made Last Jedi. His new movie and everything. The Brooklyn 50s movie with Ed Norton where he has Tourette's and he's solving a mystery. God, I saw those trailers for when I saw the Joker movie, and both of them look incredible. I'm going to go see those in the theater. Guess what? Rom-coms and other things, it's like they've become kind of ordinary. And unfortunately, because of the DVD and cable and now streaming business, we don't have to rush to the theaters to see these movies like we did 20 years ago. I'm sorry, you've gone by the way of the horse and buggy. Deal with it. But anyway, I talk about it more on the Kareem episode if you want to hear it. And I'll be interested in your thoughts as well on these subjects as more. What do you think of the Joker movie, man? It's still buzzing in my head, and I'm sure I'll still have conversations with creatives when I have a chance to talk to them. Wasn't it interesting to hear James say that he wasn't interested in seeing the Joker movie? Very, very interesting. Again, interesting, polarizing film. Comic book movie, sorry. But it'll be certainly part of the conversation in the days and weeks ahead right here on Word Balloon. Thanks a lot for listening. More great content coming for you in October. In the meantime, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2019.